Right, good morning everyone. It's not so dissimilar to a Zoom call this, as hopefully I'm not on mute. No, I'm not. Thank you so much for confirming that. That's a really good way to start. But it's great to be back in person over a talk with a headset. My name's Philip. I work at Solidatus, which I helped found, and more recently I've taken the job of Chief Innovation Officer. Because I like to invent stuff, and that's why I got into this business in the first place. We're a fast-growing data company. We have anchored ourselves around data lineage, and we're going to talk a bit about that today, along with talking about data culture and data literacy, because that's really enabling for a business. And if you're going to really deploy a governance solution, you should have a cultural solution with that, and a literate cultural solution. I think at the beginning of my career, data was or knowledge of data was handed around. It's like a hot potato. What's in my system? What's in my system? And the evolution of the culture has been such that actually it's very much the case now where everyone has to take some responsibility for handing off that data rather than expecting everyone to know everything. We need to create a living and breathing data culture inside our organisation, and we need to create that in such a way that there is a seat right at the lowest level to the top of the organisation. The CDO has to, in today's organisation world, today's enterprise, really deliver something to the board. So data is at the centre of context. Data is at the centre of, if you like, removing the complexity of how an organisation operates. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, how to embed that into the context of the organisation. The data world has changed a lot, and we need our approach to change with it. Disruption. We talk a lot about disruption. Sometimes it's a bad thing. If it's done right, it's a good thing. It's a palate cleanser for thought. It enables you to perhaps take yourself away from an ingrained process and put yourself into a new way of doing things. So these kind of palate cleansing processes are things like move to cloud. They give you an opportunity to reinvent yourself, to prepare yourself for a better, more perhaps structured world. I like to think of our approach as foundational for that. Growing a good organisation needs a good foundation, and we live in challenging times. So having those good foundations in place is a really important thing. I guess challenging times is an understatement, really. We can't control the events of the world around us, but we can try to control our little bit of the world around us, and we can make it easy for other people to interoperate with our world. So, preparing yourself for challenges is important. Giving yourself foundations is important. And above all, if you do that right, you will create a resilient business. So that's the challenge, and hopefully that's something that we can ground ourselves in and move forward together with. Because the world is connected. I briefly touched on our lineage approach, our lineage first approach. Because our philosophy is that everything is connected, we believe that effectively the butterfly flapping its wings over there does create the reaction on the other side. People, processes, data are interacting at every single level. They have purpose, they have context, they have abilities to work, license to operate. We collect vast amounts of data, and we have vast amounts of controls these days on how that data can be used. You need to have the right tooling in place to make better decisions that are less risky and give people who perhaps don't have context immediately the ability to make better informed decisions. We have to foster that data culture. we have to foster data literacy. If you don't give people information, they kind of don't have the ammunition with which to operate. So at Solidatus, we like to think of ourselves as a silver thread. The word Solidatus is actually a Latin word. It means to knit or to consolidate. It's the root word for the word solid. It's the root word for the word data. Consolidate, soldier, marching together. And that's our philosophical angle. If you can pull the organisation together to have it marching together, consolidating information and context, you can fuel insight and innovation and future-proof your strategy. So, if you want to increase data literacy, you need to provide an up-to-date, dynamic, and critically self-service environment. You can't expect people to wait around for the SMEs. We are lucky today, we're in a room together. We're going to have a lot of talking and a lot of, water cooler conversations where you can gather information, but we've all been there for the last 3 years with our headsets on, but in rooms isolated from other people. Self-service, if you did it right, enabled your organisation. There's countless systems, countless ways of working, countless pieces of data, countless people. People join, people leave. There's countless pieces of context that enable you to get your return on investment, or disable you if you can't get hold of things. We like to think if you align every component of your business through a good operational blueprint, the Solidatus blueprint, it can provide the equivalent of a Rosetta Stone. So the Rosetta Stone, for those who don't know it, was a lovely thing that was found by Napoleon's armies, North Africa, I think, which had 3 languages on it. Dead language, living language. The dead language, mainframes, for those of you out there. Living language, Python maybe, but it allowed you to translate between old world and new world. So a complete dead language which we had no context with at all, we had no link to, no connectivity with, suddenly became accessible to us. And that was really important. Now, context should be given to the organisation at every point. A blueprint of your ecosystem is significantly beneficial. If you want to onboard new processes, you want to merge with another company, you want to buy a company, you want to migrate to cloud, or just enable a new regulation to be brought in and quickly integrated with your systems. It's immeasurably beneficial for you to understand the blueprint of your organisation. It gives you the power at every level to have a bird's eye view and a very detailed view, focus on the bit that you need, demystify the bit that you don't need, ignore things that have no context or information that you need in them, just to focus in on the right parts. Operate your business in a scalable fashion with scalable data, scalable responsibility and scalable context. Very important. How does this work in the real world though? Let's take a look. Okay, so what is a blueprint? Obviously, originally a blueprint, we all know, we've seen them, kind of blue tracing paper, 2D picture, a drawing, very anodyne, a plan, perhaps tell you what a building looks like or a bridge, wiring diagrams in their dimensions, component placement, construction materials, built by specialists, usually architects maybe. But it allows you to quickly check and look at the building that you're building or the bridge that you're building or whatever and see, okay, is it sensible? Is it in compliance with regulations? It's generally a carefully thought through thing. Of course, modern blueprints are all 3-dimensional and you can run simulations on them in computers and everything else. And we do a lot of translation from old blueprints to new blueprints. It's a big thing that happens when you go to an old building, you want to put something in it. You probably modernize the blueprint immediately if it's an old building, get it into a computer and you can start working on it in a different fashion. But it's properly put down, it's laid out, and it conforms to standards. pretty much any architect could go and look at the blueprint. Once you've got the blueprint, any builder could go along, sufficiently qualified, and build their part of the building. Each of the lines, each of the parts of the blueprint have specific meanings and purposes. Now, let's take that away from building a building and let's build an enterprise. We'll go back to what we had on our previous slide: people, processes, data, technology, governance. Can we lay out a business like this, an enterprise like this? Well, at different points in your enterprise and at different levels of context, you have different tools. Can you always be confident that if you like, the structural integrity of that tool set is going to be good all the way through? It's sound, it's compliant, regulatory obligations are being followed, privacy standards, construction standards, whatever. Are you confident? And this is really important. Like, a lot of you will work for or around or with regulated things, whether it's data or an organization. Every point you try to integrate with an organization, you have to be sure that you are satisfying all of the obligations that your organizations have, whether they're just requirements or whether they are really sort of legally binding facts. Lineage, connectivity, complicated. Even the simplest of simple organizations starts off really complicated. My own organization, with just over 100 and something people, 115 people I think now, I recently had to put someone into a lot of the systems, and it suddenly dawned on me that that simple company that I started with my co-founders some years ago, that had like 3 things it did, 3 little computer systems, and now blossomed into, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 computer systems. Personal data was all over the place. So it's messy. It is messy. Okay, that's the first epiphany. The world is messy. What needs to be regulated? What needs to be documented? Has it been documented? Has regulation been properly applied to it? Let's put some context on things now. So, slightly simplifying stuff, starting to put in some federated information. Every little part of the business starts to put a little bit of information in, starts to give a little bit of context to all the other parts of the business. I like the phrase context is king. Without context, you absolutely cannot operate an organization properly. Context is powerful. We have a lot of features within the software that allow powerful collaboration of context. Your little bit of information adds to the sum total of everyone else's little bit of information to interface around a common language to allow context to be brought forward to you. Federating knowledge, federating key business processes. We can zoom in, we can highlight bits, we can create interactivity. Think of it like taking that blueprint, which was on a piece of paper, maybe a huge piece of paper, maybe lots of pieces of paper put together. And now you can go into the modern world where you can actually start walking through the building, seeing the bits that you want to see, thinking about how furniture's laid out, for example. Data is furniture, right? So should that piece of data be in that room? Should that piece of data be in that room? And so on and so forth. How do things work together? How does policy define things? What are access controls like? What does it really do? If I put an access control there, can I still get to the piece of data behind it that I need to have access to? Both now and critically in the future as well, because processes might not be here today, they may be here tomorrow or next year. So what happens if I build a new building today with today's reg, but it's actually going to go live when there's a new reg in place? You need to simulate those sort of things. So the benefit of something like Solidatus is that it provides far more context than just pure regulatory reporting, controls, governance. There's a business benefit. Your investment is targeted to what you really need it to be targeted towards. Impact analysis. getting a major transformation program right the first time, not the second time. I can control context, I can control the view, I can control the lens. So I could pretend I'm a business user, I'm an IT user, I'm a board member, and so on. How do I see the world? Because it's different for everybody. What happens when you want to change something, when you want to change a product? How does it affect the rest of the business? What's the flow? In this case, we're changing a product. Where does that impact? What's the magnitude and the scope of the change, the downstream information, the systems that it connects to? The insight and the intelligence of having this landscape view and understanding the level of interconnectedness of your applications, the data repositories that enable you to get stuff done, the cost of ownership of each change, each piece of data. That thing might look like a really good idea, but if you do it, it's going to cost you more than you're going to make, for example. Or making that little change over there will make everything simpler. Those are good pieces of information to be had that often live in the heads of specialists. Federating, self-serving this sort of information is really important. We want to get rid of unknown unknowns, but more importantly, we don't want there to be an unknown known that we haven't got access to. We want to cope with regulatory change. For example, privacy changes. We want to keep the momentum of the business. I have worked in, and I'm sure the people around here have done the same, in too many business projects that have caused a catastrophic seizing up of the organisation around my project because my change is perceived to be either more important at a regulatory level than a business change, or it is so complicated that no one around me can make changes at all. Keeping your BAU activities going and your change activities going while performing really important mandatory tasks against those discretionary ones that are going to give you a return on investment is really important. Moving to cloud, for example, should not stop you innovating on your product set, and we know it does. Implementing data and privacy controls, interjurisdictional obligations, all of these things should be transparent to your organization's actual business. We can zoom in and see the effect of one simple change, or we can zoom out and see the effect of lots and lots of changes. We can see how they interweave with each other. What happens if you're running a project, that project's supposed to go live, that one's going to go live, and then suddenly this one gets delayed? You might be relying in the second project of things that are happening in the first project. Can you still go ahead, or does the other project now need to go back? We've seen this far too many times. And it costs us. Not only does it cost us as an organisation because we're delaying a project, it's reputational cost. How many times has IT been told you're useless because you can't do something easy? This is easy. Yes, but the 10 other changes before it are more complicated and I've got to wait for them. Being able to have that self-served and given to our principals, the people who are the people we work for, showing them that from a complicated real-world landscape that their change interacts with other change or doesn't. Getting from that whole enterprise view to a context-driven view and drilling down to the root cause of something that's gone wrong is really, really important. Having that dynamic, interactive blueprint for your organisation allows people, now I'm going to bring it back to the cultural element, to feel like they own a bit of the cultural items of the organisation. They can see now why things are complicated. They can interact with the organisation and they can feel like they're part of the culture. They're literate now about the complexities of change. So, we can cover a lot of ground in a culturally aware, data literate organisation with access to a catalogue, good lineage, governance, quality and controls all in one place. We can reduce the cost of ownership of data because a lot more people can operate data. If more people can operate data, it's going to be less expensive, more efficient. Because really, data isn't expensive, it's complexity that kills you. Getting people to understand that is really important. So, components of an active data culture. Right, so your data can be mature or immature. One application or one system or one part of an organization can have nailed it, absolutely nailed it. If components around it haven't, we're going to be in a place where it doesn't really matter how good my area is if I rely on areas that I cannot interact with. We have to understand where we want to get to, yes. We have to understand why we're going there and how. We have to understand the challenges that we face on the way. The dependencies are as important as the destination. What if we took change and disruption as an opportunity then? Reimagining the business, testing the possibilities. One of the big things that you can do is simulate a wholesale change to your organisation without actually having to get hundreds of different specialisms involved. If you could do that, and you could prove the cost of ownership of a change would be lower complexity, faster time to market, cheaper, more compliant, you have a better chance of getting a business case. You have a better chance that when you get the business case approved, that you will be able to assert that what you did was what you were aiming to do. This is really what we created Solidatus for. And if I'm honest, I got enormously frustrated with doing a project, having that project really successful for a year or two, moving on to another project because I like new projects, and then watching the next group of people and the next group of management coming through and going, oh, well, I just don't understand this, it's too complicated. It's all perfectly documented. Oh, in the 3 years since I've left, you've not updated any documentation, you've not done anything properly, there's no rigor there. Well, of course you're going to replace it. That's not a return on investment. And while you've got lots of that sort of foundational pieces, it's like having a building and then trying to replace the foundations every couple of years while having the building not falling down on you. It's that we've got to get past that. We need to understand that stuff. We need to be confident about the possibilities of changing things that are in place, as well as innovating and transforming our organisation. We can build a common language that enables that culture, because of course we are in the business of making everyone collectively interested and enabled and invested in the data of the organisation. Apart from anything else, legislation is dictating that. It's a board level problem now. If we don't enable, we're not going to be able to get budget, we're not going to see good change being made, and we will have consciously engineered a lifespan to everything we do. We should be turning that around. We should be consciously engineering in a lifespan that's not finite into what we're doing. It really should be the case that we are saying to the organisation, continue to invest in your data, continue to invest in your culture, in the literacy of your data. Build better, build smarter, build for long life. Right? So you've got to build for an organisation that wants to thrive on the fact that it's got systems that have had their life extended, because transformationally it makes absolutely no sense to remove them. Ingrained in the organisation. So reimagine your data. Build a better future for yourself. See the data that's held across your organisation as an opportunity, not something to be feared or something to be transformed away. Understand it. Make yourself an agile, data-centric, data-literate culture. That will lead on to data-literate and data-centric decision-making, powerful decision-making. Adopting a good blueprint gives you flexibility. It enables you to try lots of different methodologies, even if it's just in the scenario planning. Powered by your data insights, you improve your organization resilience. You get the ability to make decisions, even if at the beginning they look highly uncertain. You will be able to drive confidence into things. So, design, support, guide, grow your organization through every stage of this journey. So whether you've got a bit that's immature or a bit that's mature, your challenge is to raise everybody up. Drive data maturity through every stage. It's ubiquitous. This is a ubiquitous journey, no matter what industry you're in. Whatever your objectives, pretty much everything that we're going to do over the next years is going to be data-driven. That dynamic blueprint needs to grow with you. It needs to change with you, and it needs to disrupt. So whether you're an on-prem shop, cloud shop, an on-prem to cloud shop, a multinational, a multi-cloud, you can cut your implementation of the future down, you can improve your confidence, and you can allow for better decision making in a more informed, compliant fashion. And we can tackle our increasingly uncertain world with a higher degree of confidence. So, that's my bit. And come visit us. Today more than ever, the board has less and less excuses to point the finger at other people. They need to be data literate and part of their data culture. Demands are board high now. CDOs are key players. They have real responsibilities and they can't be ignored anymore. Excuses for not understanding cannot be tolerated, and everybody is a data steward. Everybody. The failure to share is going to lead to an organisational failure. Organisational failure. We think we're the tool to help with that confidence journey, and we think that with the right level of culture and the right level of literacy, you will drive the debate of data to a better place. That's my bit. I'd like to ask if there's any questions, and because this is like a Zoom session, can you put your hand up so that they know? So we have one at the front.